to make my own way. She seemed to know that I had to go, but I'd come back home one day. Take me home to my family. Take me home to my friends. Take me home where my heart lies, and let me sing again. Take me home, 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 let me sing again. Take me home.
I love this song. It's very moving, and you actually sing it, don't you?
Yes, so thank you. I do sing it. Yeah, we'll get onto that. Yeah. So thank you for joining us. My name is Laurence Wood. Our details are on the screen if you want to connect with us, which would be great. Thank you for joining us. So I've got a quick story to tell you first. Exactly 1 year ago, I came to this lovely conference. Has anybody been to a pub called Beowulf? It's the best pub, isn't it? It's the best pub. You must try and go there. So one of the reasons it was a great pub and a great evening is I met Ilam, and I travelled I thought I'd come so far from Yorkshire, and Ilan had come from Israel, so I then didn't feel so impressive. But we got chatting, and we obviously had a lot of the same views, and Ilan told me this story about Yorkshire and about mining. And so we then decided, let's pitch that story and try and come back. So here we are. And this is Ilan.
Yes. And
you don't need that.
I have a mic. And this is Laurence. And actually, while we were in the pub, we found out that we have a lot of things we share. We're both 50, as it turns. We found that yesterday. We both started with software on the same type of computer, which is the ZX81. Anyone knows the Sinclair ZX81? So,
us old people.
Yes. So it's very geeky, but this is the first time I fell in love was with the ZX81. So this is very geeky. And so Laurence is also an Agile coach, as I am, and helping organizations excel and meet their goals through the Agile mindset and values and principles. So we found that we have many things in common. And in that pub, when we talked about the miners in Yorkshire, we said, let's make a talk out of this and submit it to Agile on the Beach 2019. And here we are doing that talk.
And the link to Yorkshire, so Ilan told me all about this Yorkshire mine, which he's going to share with you. The link to the music was that I'm actually in a mining choir in Yorkshire. So it's a 100-year-old choir that I still sing in today. So the heritage was quite a good connection for me. So that was kind of why we got talking.
And this is really a miner's song. The miners.
Yeah, so that was a miner's song, and I do sing that song.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so anyone knows what that is? It's a diamond. And what are diamonds made of? Well, everyone knows that diamonds are made of coal, which is, of course, not true. They're not. Diamonds were formed deep in the mantle of the Earth, like 150 kilometers deep in the Earth. And the only reason that we know about them is through volcanic eruptions, they also get erupted. So they are rare deep in the Earth, and they are more rare outside. So we found them in rocks and stuff like that, that they were erupted with. And the connection with coal is that both diamonds and coal are made of carbon. Coal is actually made of turf that was compressed over hundreds of thousands of years until it became rock, solid. And those are the coal rocks. So these are diamonds. Anyone here has a diamond, maybe? Or gave someone dear a diamond?
Yeah, how many people are wearing a diamond? We thought it'd be interesting. Because if we ask that... Well, yeah, that's it. I've got something to cut their finger off. But 10 years ago, it would have been many more, wouldn't it? I think.
Yeah. So how many of you, your parents have a diamond? So quite a few more. It used to be more popular. And so we're going to use that metaphor. How do we find the diamonds within our teams, the teams that we work with? And to do that, I want us to go on a time travel. We're traveling back to 1949, Britain. It's Yorkshire, South Yorkshire, a place called Elsecar Colliery. Well, it's still that. But
is that right?
yeah, we're traveling in time. It takes time to travel in time. Yes. Anyone recognizes this? DeLorean, yes, right. This is actually someone who replicated the DeLorean from the movie on his own DeLorean. Yes, and he only asked that we mention him on the slide. So it's the post-war years, and there's a great need for improved productivity and improving worker conditions in England, to the extent that it's a national project, and the Prime Minister at the time, Attlee, says there's a critical need for an upgrade in both productivity and in worker conditions. And one of those areas is energy, and energy in the 1940s is, of course, coal. And there's a new technology in coal mining. It's called longwall mining. And those types of machines are used in Elsecar as well. And to understand what happened in Elsecar, first we need to understand what's happening in the other mines. That new technology, in order to operate it, the teams are working in 3 shifts. The first shift that is operating in this cycle is the preparation shift. This is when if something needs to be blown up, they put in dynamite and blow it, and sometimes they undercut the coal work so that the machine can operate more freely. So they prepare the coal face for the filling shift. This is the actual mining. So the filling shift are operating the machines. It goes on conveyor belts, from conveyor belts to cars, from cars to trains, and goes all over the country and abroad. And when that shift is out, the machines need to be moved to their new location, to the next coal face. So we have a shifting shift that take the equipment apart and put it back in the next location. So we only have to look at that picture and see that within those 3 shifts, there's only one productive shift. It's not that the other shifts are not doing important work, but the productive shift, the one that's getting coal outside of the mine, is the filling shift. And in order to understand how productivity can be improved, there's a team of researchers from the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations in London to understand what's happening in the mines. And Eric Trist is leading this effort. And they decide to do something very simple. They're going to go for a good mine, a mine with high productivity, and they're going to go to a bad mine, a mine with poor productivity, and compare the 2 mines. And through that, they're going to understand what makes a good mine good and what makes a bad mine not good. And the project never started. It never started because the managements of the mines didn't want them to do that. The unions opposed. They didn't even want them to go down the mine and examine what's happening. So instead of canceling the project, they decide to go just for a good mine. And they're going to Elsecar Colliery in Yorkshire for 2 reasons. One, it's a very big mine with many coal faces, so they have opportunity to examine teams of various productivity levels. And the research assistant, Ken Bamforth, used to work in that mine for 18 years.
Yeah, so this is really key, I think. So I'm trying to draw my real life experiences out of Ilan's story. So 2 things there. I think it's really important that there was a personal relationship. And for me, you can read all the books, but if you haven't got a personal relationship with people, you certainly can't coach them, and you probably can't lead them. And the other thing that this reminds me of is I went into an NHS organisation a few years ago, and I was fairly new to coaching then, and I was trying to help the teams, but I learned that you can't force yourself on a team and say, I'm here to coach you. That they're not going to let me in, and so that's the same experience that I think Trist and his team had, that if you say to a mine, we want to come down your mine to look at your productivity, I can imagine the sort of language you might be greeted with. So I think as a coach, I experienced that in a much softer way, and I've learned since that I have to be much more patient and get to know people before I can then start coaching them.
Yes, and another thing along those same lines, one of the things that they understood is that the ideas of Taylor from the end of the century, remember we're now in 1949, so it's the previous century. The ideas of the previous century are not holding water anymore. So it's not. It used to be very good at the turn of the century. It's not working now, and for many other minds to say that it's like blasphemy. You can't say that. And then they go to Elsecar and they examine. And Eric Trist was once quoted as saying, "I went down one person and I came up another," because what he found there changed him. And what they find is the following: they are still operating in 3 shifts. The first shift, they do preparation, filling, and shifting. In the second shift, they do preparation, filling, and shifting. And of course, the same in the third shift. So just by observing that, you can see that in this system, we have 3 productive shifts. And although none of the workers are busy all the time in their role, overall, coal is coming out of the mine all the time, throughout the day. Although someone who's working in preparation is not doing preparation work all the time, they might have experience with other types of roles, still the productiveness is higher. How much higher? 60-70% higher. So an average mine will do 3.3 tons of coal per person per shift, and in Elsecar it's 5.5. So it's 2/3 more productive.
And you're not saying here, I don't think, that these guys are working harder.
No.
So and this reminds me, we often use the phrase, "Don't be a busy fool." Mm-hmm. So I think sometimes when we say, "Oh, let's use Agile," a lot of people feel that they're going to have to work faster and harder. But if you're getting it right, it shouldn't feel like that. It should actually feel like it's easier, but you're more productive.
Right.
That's the feeling.
Right, because in terms of, Eric Trist called this the socio-technical systems. We're looking now at the technical aspect, the technology, not technology of the machines themselves, the technology of operating the machines. The cross-functional, multidisciplinary teams is the technical part. And they call it socio-technical because the social part is at least as important, if not more, than the technical part. So let's look at the social aspect. Let's go back for a minute to the bad mines. In the bad mines, we have the miners and we have the managers, and the miners are responsible for preparing, filling, and shifting respectively, according to their role. And everyone knows that if someone is working in preparation, they'll do that until their retirement. It's a profession. It's like a tester. It's like a C++ programmer. It's like a program manager. You'll do that until retirement because you cannot move between roles. There's too much to learn for that. And managers, they're responsible for the task assignment, so everyone knows what they need to do. They're responsible for the work plan. They're responsible for solving problems. They're responsible for the communication within the shift. They're responsible for the communication between the shifts. So the managers are very busy, and the miners are very busy, and the productivity is still low. And in Elsecar, this is what's happening. We have the miners. And the miners are doing, of course, preparation, filling, and shifting. They also do the task assignments, and they also do the work plan, and they also solve problems together. And they are also responsible for the communication within the teams. So what do the managers do? What do we need managers for? Then are responsible for the communication between the shifts, not within the shift. There are people responsible for that. They are called miners. And they are responsible for helping the flow of the shift. So they're not assigning tasks. The miners said, we didn't need a boss telling us every minute what to do. This is a quote from Eric Trist of what the miners said.
And this makes me think about project managers becoming Scrum Masters. And I've worked with a lot of those over the last 5 years. And what I find, sometimes they find difficult, depends on personality mostly, I think, but sometimes they find it difficult that actually we don't want them to tell everyone what to do. We want them to focus more on the environment and creating that environment for people to work out what they want to do. And I know we're going to get to that next.
Right. So that's only part of the social aspect. Another important part is how they work together. So the miners said they had opportunity for variety of tasks. If I'm a preparation guy and I want to experiment a little bit with filling or with shifting, I have the opportunity for that because we are working together. In the other mines, they don't have this opportunity at all. They're not working together. And they have an increased sense of responsibility. And they have an increased sense of commitment to the results. To the extent that this is in quotes because it's a term that the miners invented. They do joint optimizations. You remember the need of the hour. We are in critical need of an upgrade for productivity and worker conditions. And they do joint optimizations. The miners, on their own accord, find ways to improve the productivity of the mines. No one asked them to do that. And still they do it. So if that's what they're doing, what are the managers doing? They have less to do. And their main role is to lead, to help the system work. So they go with those results back to the Tavistock in London, and the first reaction is disbelief. They say, there's no way that those miners invented that kind of system. And they bring up the data, and they said, look, this is what we found. This is what we found down the mines. And Ken used to work there, so it's not something that we're making up. He worked there for 18 years. And they say, we have to take this to all the mines in the country. They must have this kind of system because it's exactly what we want to do. Improved productivity, improved worker conditions. In the other mines, the miners were not happy. We know that from complaint books of the era. And in Elsecar, they're happy to come to work. They're happy to go down the mines. And they're happy to go back home. They're just happier workers. So they go to the other mines, and the response is, what did they say? We don't, why not? Why would they not have that?
Yeah, and I've got a real experience here. So I used to work in a factory, in the Jaguar factory, sort of learning about lean, but we weren't very lean. And there were 3 guys that worked on my section, and their job was basically to pull a lever to press a piece of metal to create a bracket. But each person was creating, there were 3 presses, each person was creating a different bracket. So I was their supervisor. So I thought I was being really clever. I said to them, what about if we train for each other's role, then it could make your job more interesting. So I thought they'd just say, yeah, that's a great idea. But they said, we need to think about that. And then they went off and got the unions involved, and I had to work with the unions. And so this is really true. This is what factories and coal mines are like. And after several, I can't quite remember how long, but it was a long time, several weeks, they came back with the shop steward and they said to me in the office, we're going to stick to what we know best. So the answer was, we're not going to learn anything else. So that was a real example.
Right. So it resonates with what happened in the mines. What Eric Tris said is that management, they believe that power and control is more important than productivity. Say what? Power and control is more important than productivity? When I prepared for the talk, I was talking to my partner at work, Elad, and he said, well, I don't think they believe that. They believe that power and control is the key to productivity. They believe that with power and control, they will get better productivity, which makes sense. But actually, I'm more with Eric Trist. Because one of the things they said, well, you're talking about this coal mine far away in Yorkshire, and we don't have the same workers. They just don't want to come to work. We have different people here. So we can't have that kind of system here. And I think that power and control was a defense mechanism. It was a defense mechanism protecting the managers from acknowledging that our people are capable of becoming self-organizing teams. And then what does it say about us? So they believed that power and control is more important than productivity. So at least the unions, who are in charge of the working conditions, they wanted this change, right? No. They said no. So why would they say no? It's part of the power structure. Yes. Right. Yes. Right. So it's the socio-economic anchor. While the managers said, look, we don't have the same workers in your Else what you called it, Else car? We don't have the same workers. So if we give them the freedom to become self-organized, they might decide that they don't want to come to work. And then what we'll do? Once we gave them that power, we're stuffed.
And there's something, isn't it, when you say we want you to be more productive, that doesn't sound very attractive. Mm-hmm. But if they'd played more on the we want you to be happier, which is what I try to do, less complaints, then maybe they would have had a conversation. But yeah, talking about productivity.
They knew that, and still they said no. So from the union's point of view, they said, well, if we let the teams become self-organized and the manager's responsibility is to lead, we believe that the tension between workers and managers is good. It's important. It's essential. And once we give the managers the power to lead, they will take advantage of the poor miners. They'll make them work harder. And once we give the freedom to those managers, we're stuffed. We can't take it back. So why would that happen? Why couldn't they convince the other minds to adopt that socio-technical systems? Eric Trist said the following: what we are introducing with the socio-technical systems is very different to what we know today. So the Tayloristic approach is top-down and hierarchical. And it's not that we are very critical towards Frederick Taylor, too much, I think. I think we're also abusing his own ideas to negate him. But the structure is hierarchical, and the structure for the socio-technical systems, the self-organizing, is non-hierarchical. And this is very different to what we have today. And Eric Trist said the following: it will take 20, 30, 40 years for the ideas to diffuse, let alone the application. And the social technical systems will either fade away or they will create something very different to what we have today. So what do you say? Have the social technical systems disappeared, faded away, or are they becoming more prevalent? What do you think? Pardon?
Not fast enough.
Not fast enough. Well, it will take 20, 30, 40 years for the ideas to diffuse, for people to begin to understand those ideas, let alone the application. And to understand the application, I want us to take another journey in time. We're traveling this time to the year 2001. And we're traveling to Snowbird, Utah. And a group of software professionals are meeting up, and they have a 3-day meetup. And then at the end of the meetup, they're coming out with a short document. Most of you probably know it. It's called the Agile Manifesto. And let's go through just a few of the principles of the manifesto to understand how and if it resonates with socio-technical systems. So the first principle is our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. Early and continuous. Instead of one shift that is productive, all shifts are productive. So that's the first principle. We want coal or software going out of the mine all the time. The 11th principle is the best architectures, requirements, and designs emerge from self-organizing teams. Now, what is self-organizing teams if not a socio-technical system? Principle number 4. Business and people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. And the word must in English is really strong, isn't it? So it's not they can, they should, must work together daily. So it's the preparation people, filling people, shifting people must work together, and the managers must work with.
And I think in El's car, they actually live together. So, for example, if you were a father and son, or brother, uncle, etc., you'd probably work in the same shift. So they're actually living together as well. And that's something that I experienced, because if you think about it, they were probably also singing together, and I still do that 100 years later. So it's more than just the shift; it's actually the community around the shift, I think.
And yesterday we talked about that probably they had a rugby team.
Yeah, they probably played rugby against the other shifts.
Right.
Yeah.
So if in the other minds it will be the preparation rugby team against the filling rugby team, now it's shift 1 rugby team against shift 2 rugby team, and they're all working together. Principle number 6, the most efficient and effective method of conveying information to and within a development team is face-to-face conversation. And the socio-technical system is modeled towards face-to-face conversation. You cannot do it without face-to-face conversation. You cannot pair with someone without being face-to-face. And principle number 5, build projects around motivated individuals. Like, of course, bring me motivated people and I'll show you how productive we are. But it continues. Give them the environment and support they need, and trust them to get the job done. Give them the environment and trust them. And this is really the main thing. It's about trust. It's trusting the process, and it's about trusting the people. And maybe the main takeaway that we'd like you to take from the talk today is about making that leap of faith, that your own team is a diamond. Diamond in the rough, they say in the movie. Yeah. It's a diamond to be extracted. You have the right people. You just want to create the environment in which they can blossom. And in contrast to the 1940s, where they didn't have this information, Eric Trist went down the mine and he was shocked. He couldn't believe that they invented it. Today we have so many examples, we have so many reference points that we can learn from, that we just need to choose. We just Google up self-organizing teams and we find material about it.
Yeah, so I think that's a key thing about this 40 years thing that Trist predicted, that it seems that, to me, and I've been using Agile for a long time, Agile and Lean, since the late 80s. So things are definitely changing faster now than they have been since I've been working. And we've chatted about this in our Skype relationship, and I think that's about the internet, because 10 years ago, you couldn't really find everything you wanted on the internet about Agile, but you can now. You basically don't need to leave your seat, really, if we're honest. You can read everything on the internet, you can find videos, you can watch this on the internet, and this is fantastic. Yeah. So I think for me, that's the key change, is the acceleration in information on the internet and just the media available.
Right. So we want to share with you 6 reference points that you can use. I've divided them to from theory to practice, and then from practice back to theory. So the first one is, of course, a book about Eric Trist. I haven't read this specific book, but during my studies for organizational development, I learned a lot about Eric Trist. So, of course, reading his story and his life story and his findings is relevant. The second one is a book by Takeuchi and Onaka about the knowledge creating company. Takeuchi and Onaka are the ones who wrote the new product development game. It's the work, the article that inspired Ken Schwaber and Jeff Sutherland to invent Scrum. And in this book, they give examples from multiple companies, mostly Japanese, but not only, about how creating companies, knowledge creating companies operate. And a lot of this is about creating the settings for self-organizing teams. And the third one, those two are theoretical and heavy reading. And the third one is like a fable about a leadership team that went through the 5 dysfunctions of a team, from building trust and up to becoming oriented to results. And through that fable, through the story, delivering a way to create a highly productive leadership team. And the 3 other books are from practice back to theory. One is The Year Without Pants. It's about Automatic and WordPress. That the reason I chose to put this here is because WordPress work only with dispersed and what's the word?
Distributed.
Distributed teams. So they meet several times a year, but most of their work is not working together. So they work together on online tools and stuff like that, but they're not in the same space.
But they're religious about getting together, aren't they?
They are, absolutely.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
they have meetups to create enough fuel for them to work in the rest of the months. The second one is in the Plex. It's about Google from their early days, and mainly the first two parts of the book, how they created the environment for self-organizing teams. And the third one is about Zappos. This is an apparel online shop, but their real purpose is delivering happiness, not delivering shoes. And how they created a self-organizing culture there without top-down hierarchical structures. So I think in terms of the talk, we're through. We have enough time to try our experiment, don't we?
Is that the question? Oh, no, your experiment. Yeah, do
Yes.
that first, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So before we open for Q&A, we want to experiment with something. And for this, we will need a volunteer.
You might have to say what they have to do.
Well,
Unless they're really brave.
yeah, I will find someone brave. If not, yeah, great. So well done. A round of applause. So you are the manager of this group.
Okay.
And your task
Congratulations.
is... Yeah. We'll talk about pay afterwards. And your role is really simple. What you need to do is each of the people in this room will choose two people in the room. And you need to make sure that all of them are organized such that each of them is standing in an equal distance from the two people that he or she chose.
Okay. So I'll try to repeat it back.
Yes.
So you're saying that each person in the room
Yes.
has to pair up with one other person?
Each person in the room needs to choose two other people
other people.
in the room.
Okay.
And then you need to make sure that each of them is standing within equal distance from the two people that they chose.
Okay. Got it.
Got it? Okay. It's yours. They're yours.
Okay. So, not sure how many people we have, but we'll find out as we make groups of 3. So, I'm going to ask you to look around you, make a group of 3, and then stand in an equilateral triangle formation.
So first they choose, then they organize, yeah?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I would say. That's my suggestion. If your group of 3 has a better way to go about it, you go for it.
No. I think you missed the point. They're not doing what you asked them. Guys,
Are they not?
guys.
Okay, we'll pause for a second. We're getting feedback.
No. You didn't understand. First they choose,
Yeah.
then they organize.
Okay. I don't know if I see the fine-grained difference, but we'll repeat. If I can have your eyes and ears up here and your voice is quiet for a moment. If I can have your voice quiet for a moment. If I can have your voice quiet for a moment. First, choose 2 people. Then organize yourselves in the shape. Is that what you're
Right. So
asking
just
me?
randomly choose two other people, and then
Okay.
organize.
And I'll count down. I'll give you 30 seconds, okay? 30. You can talk. It's okay. 30, 29, 28, 27, 26, 25,
Yes.
24, 23,
Yeah?
22.
No, it doesn't matter.
I like what I'm seeing over here. You're interesting. Yeah, I like it. 21, 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2,
All right.
All right.
I want to do a quick QA session. Raise your hand if you're not standing within an equal distance from the two people that you chose. All right, so you have a few bugs.
Yeah. Well, this was interesting. So, can I ask a question?
Yeah, you're the manager.
So, I heard the prompt from you two, and I came up with a particular idea of what this would look like. But then I was watching you three. What did you do at first? Will you tell? Were you doing something?
We just exchange over because it was really efficient.
Yeah.
We didn't have to move very far.
Yeah. So my original instructions had a lack of imagination, and you came up with something that was a different interpretation, which was really fun to watch.
Yes.
And I saw this group over here doing something too. Can you tell us how you measured yourselves?
Cool. Okay, well done. What's your name again?
Hillary.
Hillary. Well done, Hillary. That's great. So Hillary is one of the people that really ruined this exercise for me. Because usually the manager tries to organize everyone in one place, and what happened immediately is self-organization. Yeah, so it's like the premise of self-organizing teams. It's like letting you. And what else did Hillary do to create the conditions for self-organizations?
I think she stayed quiet quite a lot.
She stayed,
which was
yeah.
good.
Mm-hmm. And then she counted the time. She gave you a time boundary. No one knew if you'll meet the time, but she gave you the time boundary and reflected what's going on.
I think
So
she's
just
from
meeting the-
Elskar.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, so we saw self-organization in practice. And I think it's a good time to open it for questions.
Yeah, so we were going to give a prize for the most interesting question, but I think we should give the prize to Hillary, shouldn't we? So Hillary gets my amazing new game, Richer Retrospectives, plug. So that's for you, well done.